Hey folks, once again, it is my privilege to bring to you a look inside the box of something I managed to score on the secondary market. In this case, it is a thing that I had back in the day, and when I pulled it out of the box and looked at it, I was hit with a wave of nostalgia. Now, this is, of course, Fire in the East. This is the second edition of the legendary East Front series from GDW. Several designers were involved at this point. The original, of course, was one of GDW's very first offerings. It was called Dragonok Austin, and it covers the East Front of World War II up to roughly mid-42. Not sure about the exact date on that, at which point the sequel game Scorched Earth takes over and takes you to about mid-44. There was to have been a third volume in that series, Götterdämmerung, that was never released. So in either the original sequence or this sequence. Now, one other thing is I always felt like these were really striking box designs. They don't all look equally good, and there's a couple of these Europa games that did not appear in this style of box. Their finest hour is the one I can think of most obviously. It was released in an early Ziploc and then in an earlier box that did not look this nice. But if the game is called Fire in the East, then this is the box, and we can see that it says Europa Game 1. Now let's get into the contents here. The box itself has a wee bit of dishing on the front. Something was clearly set on it, but otherwise it's in great shape. I did get this off of eBay, which means it was not incredibly cheap, but it was not for the larcenous prices one often sees on eBay either. There are 12 counter sheets, which we will take a look at in a second. No, we're going to have trouble with that. So the previous owner, it looks like this was, considered as something that might get played at some point, and I probably will replace this. These original rules actually came 3-hole punched. Whoever was responsible for this also 3-hole punched the card stock displays and bump out maps, which we have right here. And player aid cards, and put those in the book as well. And we can see that Excalibur. Okay, I have no idea what that was. Nope, no idea. All right, and so here we get into the book, and this is the 7-page Soviet Order of Battle. There is an Axis Order of Battle, and then we get into the rules, which in this case come to, there's the advanced rules. Rules are about 24 pages, as I recall, 30 pages. This was considered pretty not monstrously complicated, but pretty complicated back in the day. I am definitely considered, let me put it that way. This is pretty beat up anyway, right? This is the kind of thing you could put it in because you could just slop it in. And this kind of folio has some advantages for 3-hole punched things because it doesn't put a lot of wear on the holes, unlike a binder would, where the pages can slide a lot on the rings. They don't really have the opportunity to slide a lot. Instead, they bend along here. So you tend not to lose holes to the same problems that you do in a 3-ring binder. But in any event, we'll probably rehome those rules at some point. Now we have this thing, the Grenadier magazine. I think this turned into the Europa magazine at some point. Maybe that could be the case. I don't know. The Europa magazine ran for a long time, 87, 88 issues, something like that. That's a long time. Here's a customer reply card for Game Designers Workshop, Bloomington, Illinois. Don't send it in now. This thing's in fairly bad shape. The overall condition on this, by the way, I consider that I'm really happy with it. The rules are the rule book, actually, this is pretty unusual. The rule book is the worst condition thing in the entire set. We have an errata sheet here. Indeed, errata and notes from 1984. That's probably been updated. Here are some designer's notes by John Estelle, who I think is the lead designer on this at this point. That is in here, actually. Yeah, design, John Estelle, Paul Banner, Frank Chadwick, and Mark Miller. Paul Banner and Frank Chadwick, I think, did the original Drongnok Austin. And then we have 6 maps, which we'll show you the art on. And you might be interested to watch the First to Fight video to see how the art, while maintaining a sort of similar style and identity, did evolve over the years between when this came out, which was the early 80s, and when First to Fight came out, which was the mid 90s. So here we have, and we're kind of, east-west here. East is to the top here. Here we have Moscow. We have a fairly heavily forested, rugged area north of Moscow. Here's where Operation Typhoon was driving, right here. And this game in the time, and you can see that the maps have been set up a little bit because there's some wear along the edges and maybe a little bit of soiling on the creases. But again, they're all nice and crisp. The whole thing is a little bit musty, as though it were stored in a basement that somebody smoked in for a while. But that I don't like that smell, but it isn't going to bother me. And one, you got to make decisions on that kind of stuff when the games are this old. So here, very interesting. So this is a northern map that also covers Sweden. Almost the entire country of Sweden is actually on this map, which is interesting. And everything over here is Finland. That makes me sort of think that 5B. No, that's a Fire in the East map. The first 6 are the Fire in the East maps, right? So even though this covers most of Scandinavia, the hex scale on this, by the way, is 16 miles to the hex. And here we have another map which covers the part of the USSR that is across the border from Finland. So you can get your Winter War fix on with this, I think. We'll look at the counter mix in a minute. And then we got the one map that was folded back instead of face open. Now I'll give you a little hint here. Here we have the Courland, what I'll call the Courland Peninsula map for now, but we also see the Pripyat marshes are also down here. And I think we're not going to monkey with the folding to try and fix it. I do have, as some of you may know, copies of the Total War maps. Total War was the HMS failed attempt to bring this huge East Front game back into production, and it never did materialize. And at this point, I feel it relatively safe to assume that it won't be materializing. Nevertheless, the maps are really nice, and there's a lot of rules differences, right? There's a lot more terrain types on those maps than there are in the Fire in the East and Scorched Earth maps. I have put these counter sheets in numerical order, by the way. So here is 1A, Europa Sheet 1A, with your Germans, and somebody has kindly labeled them that these lighter sort of gray greens are the Italians. Which they're worse than Italian troops fighting over here. Probably I'd be curious to see what they did with the Spanish Blue Division, but I'm not sure when the Spanish Blue Division came in without looking it up. There is some soiling on a couple of the counter sheets. Not necessarily a big deal. I might take a moist towelette and try and wipe that down. That very well could actually be mold. So I might take a light wipe to that. You got to, of course, be careful with that kind of stuff, particularly on these older counters. Not sure what the white is. There'll be a key in one of the player aids. We'll have a color key to tell you what all these are. These are going to be this light. What is in this light looks kind of purple, which is more traditionally a light blue. This would be your Luftwaffe stuff, and I can tell that because of the planes. Here we have your Romanians in an uncharacteristic dark blue. We have this almost unreadable black on dark blue. Those are your Slovaks. Here are some Hungarians. Not in huge force. This, of course, does cover the entire East Front. I'm not sure what these are, and I hope YouTube doesn't get me in trouble for having that thing on here. But here's your marker sheet. Here's your SS. Here's your presumably SS police. Now we're starting to get into your Soviets. As you can see, there's a lot of counters here, right? This is nominally a division level game. I mean, all the materials say this is a division level game, and that's honestly nonsense. There are a lot of divisions. In fact, this entire counter sheet is all Soviet divisions. But the mere fact that you are getting Soviet divisions rather than corps will tell you that it's not really a divisional level game. And when we go back to this first counter sheet again, we see a lot of divisions, but we see a large number of smaller subdivisional size units. Now, this is a phenomenon that is not as acute here as it is in later games in the series, like, for example, Second Front, where there are an enormous array of smaller units smaller than divisions. By the time of Fire in the East, they hadn't quite lost that thread yet. The white on brown, I'm not sure what those are. This is pretty obviously Red Air Force. These are just flak units. I'm not sure what the white on brown are. They could be Siberians. I don't know why you'd have separate color for Siberians, but they drew these distinctions sometimes. Here's a whole nother sheet, at least half of which is all divisions. A lot of cavalry. There's a whole nother sheet of Soviets. A lot of sheets of Soviets here, as you can see. And again, once again, we have that little soiling up there. I can actually feel it. That makes me think it's actually a little bit of mold. I think these are army markers. Those are for multi-unit formations for which there are displays in the game. These would be factories. These would be fortified areas. Here's once again some white on this brown, and I don't know quite what it is. Here's your Red Air Force. You got quite a few planes. I say quite a few planes. Well, with the caveat that this is a fraction the number of planes that you see in, for example, Second Front, right? I mean, the West Front, you'd expect there to be more air, but, this is a lot of air, but there's a lot more in the West Front. And then we have this. Now, what I think we have here, are Soviet guards, well, that's a good point. I think these are guards. These are miscellaneous border units. And then this is Red Navy, I want to say. And I say that because of the names of some of the ships. The October Revolution, for example, was a ship that was afloat at this time. Yeah, that looks like that's the case. And then these guys, I have no idea what they are. Nope, no clue. But there are a bunch of divisions. So you'd have to figure that out. So I think this does need a little bit of TLC. But once again, you kind of take what you can get when you're looking for this kind of stuff. I do have a copy of the Urals en route as of today. I don't know how deep in the woods I'm going to go on this Europa stuff. And folks are going to ask me, hey, you've had a lot of negative stuff to say about Europa, and why are, having said all those things over, and I'm pretty much on the record with this, and am not inclined to change any of the statements that I can recall right now. So the question begs itself, why buy Europa games? Well, the fact is I have people that want to play Europa around here. And despite the many complaints I might have, and maybe I'll do another video on this at some point, although I have certainly talked about it at length already, it is not an unrewarding experience. I do feel like my Second Front experience, for example, which is one of the biggest games I've ever played from the dead beginning to the dead end, was really rewarding to play, despite my frustrations with the mechanics over the course of that year and a half. So hopefully we will be able to bring you some more of these. Like I said, I do have a Urals coming. I don't know what kind of condition it's in, but I got it for a price that I thought was in the right neighborhood for a copy of the Urals. That's kind of the third game in this East Front sequence that Götterdämmerung, which was the last year of the war, never did come out, but the Urals did expand the map 3 more maps to the east, beyond what Second Front does. So We now have this, and like I said, it's cool to have this. Don't know if I'm going to punch it. Might play it on Vassal. We'll see what happens. But it's a fascinating piece of wargaming history from I think one of the publishers that doesn't get enough attention nowadays, Game Designers Workshop. So hopefully you've found this somewhat interesting. If you have, please do give it a thumbs up. Please do subscribe to the channel. If you would like to help support Ardwulf's Lair, please do check out the links to the Patreon, the merch store, and the Ko-Fi in the video description. Until next time, thanks again for watching, and happy wargaming.